Hey, Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back. We're going to start on Davav Amud Aleph. We're on 6A2, Masechet Shabbat in the Talmud Bavli. Taner Rabbanon. It was taught in the Tosefta. Arba Rishiyot LeShabbat. There are four domains when it comes to Shabbat. As we're talking about the Malacha of Hotza'ah, taking out from one domain to another domain, right? And that is the Isser Malacha of Hanicha and Akira and Hanacha, uprooting and placing, what we've been talking about the past couple of weeks. So we have to know what is one reshut and what is another reshut. What is one domain and what is another domain. So the Bright, this Tosefta, is going to list four domains, and then it's going to explain what those four domains are, and we'll give the halachic definition as well. Okay, reshut hayahid. There is something called a private domain. We'll just mention private domain doesn't mean it has to be owned privately. It has to have certain characteristics that make it private domain, which we'll discuss shortly. Or Reshut Rabim. And then there is a public domain. Then there's something called a Carmelit. This we're going to see is going to be a Reshut Harabim Derabanan, a rabbinical Reshut Harabim, because it's going to have similarities to Reshut Rabim, even though it's not really a Reshut Rabim. The Chachamim didn't want people to think that they could just carry there on Shabbat. So they gave it a status of a Carmelit. And then you have a Makom Patur. Makom Patur, biblically, is any place that's not a Reshut Yachid and is not a Reshut Rabim. So a Carmelit initially was a Makom Patur. The Chachamim then made a Carmelit because it has characteristics of a Reshut Rabim. And they made it a Reshut Rabim Dirabanan. And a Makom Patur, we'll see what that is today. A Makom Patur means an exempt area. It is exempt because halachically you will be allowed to transfer and do hotza'ah from a makom patur to a rishus yachid, or a makom patur to rishus rabim, or rishus rabim to makom patur, or rishus yachid to makom patur. You're allowed to do hotza'ah between those places. Okay, so the Tosefta starts off the Eizohi rishut yachid. What is considered a rishut hayachid? What is considered a private domain? So the Gemara gives an example. Charitz shehu amoik asara v'rochiv arba. If a person made a ditch, so he digged into the ground 10 tefachim deep, and he has a 4 tefach by 4 tefach area inside that ditch, surface area over there. So that would be considered a reshut yachid. V'chein gader shehu gavoya asara v'rochiv arba. So too, if you had a pillar that was 10 tefachim high, and on top of that pillar there was a 4 by 4 tefach area. On top over there, it would be considered a reshut hayachid. Okay, so what happens with the pillar? If you think about it, if you have a solid pillar, you have 10 tefachim high. Lahalacha, once you have walls that are 10 tefachim high, it's considered as the wall continues to go up and up and up. This is called gud asik. The wall continues to go up. Okay, so you now have Keebler's walls all around, and you have a platform that's 4 by 4. So you have 4 by 4 type of platform, and so you have a Reshut Yachid on this pillar. Okay, so the halachic definition of a Reshut Rabim is that it has walls. Okay, it has walls that are at least 10 tfachim high, and an area inside of it of at least 4 by 4 tefachim, which, if you want to use inches, each tefach is about 4 inches. So you need something about 40 inches high. A wall, so it's not a lot. 40 inches high, and you need it to have an area, an enclosed area of 4 by 4, which is 16 inches by 16 inches. And that's already considered a reshut hayachid. Okay? Next, ve'ezohi reshut harabim. So what is considered a reshut harabim? So the Tosefta gives a few examples. A seratya, a highway, an intercity highway, according to many poskim, is a reshut harabim off the bat. Uflatya gedola, large public plaza, we're going to see it has to have characteristics of the midbar, which where the streets were 16 amot wide, which is about 28 feet, and fulashin, streets that are open at both ends. It has to have an opening at both ends. If there is doors there that impede traffic, it won't be considered a reshut rabim. Zohi reshut rabim gemura. This is a complete reshut rabim. Now, ein motziim reshut yachid reshut rabim. You're not any motziim reshut yachid zo reshut rabim zo. You cannot take from reshut rabim and put into the reshut yachid. Ve'em achisim reshut rabim zo reshut yachid. Ve'em hotzi ve'echnes. And if you took out or brought in, so you did a deoraita hotza'ah. You went from one reshut to another reshut on Shabbat, and you carried something. You did a Isra Shabbat. So bishogeg, if you did it inadvertently, hayam hatat, like all other hilchot Shabbat, you're hayam hatat. B'mezin, if you did it and deliberately, intentionally, then without a warning, without a hatzra, without getting a warning and witnesses and all that, anush karet, then you get karet. But if there was a warning and witnesses, then niskal, then the person could get stoned. Okay. So now we have the definition of 2 of the 4 rishiot. And now we're going to come to the third definition. We have now the karmelit. The karmelit, what we said, was the reshut rabim derabanan. It's not really reshut rabim. And the Chachamim gave it the state of a karmelit reshut rabim derabanan because it had similarity to reshut rabim, and they don't want people to get confused with it. Now, the karmelit is what we're most familiar with, because whenever you see what people call an eruv, right, an eruv, they're talk usually about those strings and those beams, which we'll call tzurat hapetach, which means it's the shape of a doorway. Okay, a tzurat hapetach really works primarily in a karmelit. If you have a place that the Rabbanon said is a shusarav de Rabbanon, say you can use a tzurat hapetach to convert it into a reshut yachid. So that is where. So most of our cities where we live, according to some poskim, there is no reshut rabim d'oraita today, and everything is reshut rabim d'Rabbanan. Everything is a karmelit, and everything can be made with an eruv with a tzurat hapetach. So some examples of a karmelit: aval yam, the sea, uv'ika, and an open field, the istavanit, and the stavit that we saw last time, which was the bench area, the sitav, the bench area outside the store, the karmelit, and a karmelit. We'll see what this means later on, not today though. And a log kreshut rabim, the log kreshut yachid. It's not kreshut rabim, it's not kreshut yachid d'oraita. However, the ein osim lo tibitocha. Chachamim made a decree: you cannot carry, you cannot transfer, you cannot carry in it. But if you did carry in it, right, for amon, then you're patur of a loster. You're not allowed to do it. The rabbanan patur. You don't have to bring a chatat. That's what it's patur. Patur from a chatat. But you're not allowed to do it. It's asur. Okay. But if you took from a karmelit to reshut rabim, or you bring it into a from a public domain, you cannot take it from there to reshut rabim, or take it from there from reshut rabim to there. And you don't bring in from a private domain, not from there to a private domain, because it has a status of reshut rabim derabanan. So you can't go from domain to domain. But if you took and you transferred and you brought hosa'ah, shloshtam piturin. And what's it called? It's going to be. What's it? I skipped something. He will be patur. Why? Because again, the karmelit is a reshut rabim derabanan, and if it comes to the rabbanan, you can be chayiv hatat for a d'oraita. Therefore, if there was no eruv, right, and you transferred from the karmelit to your home, or your home to your karmelit, it's aser, but it's not chayav hatat. It's the rabbanan. Okay. Now, before we continue with the fourth place, the makom patur, the Tosefta is going to give you another example of where the Chachamim made exer that you can't carry, even though you're really allowed to carry there, right? Like this carmelit, you really were the right you're allowed to carry there. It's a makom patur. You're allowed to carry there. But the Chachamim said no. Another example is chatzerot shel rabim umuvoot she'ena mefulashim erevu mutarin lo erevu asurim. What are we dealing with here? Okay, so in the times of the Talmud, the houses opened up into courtyards. Maybe in Bukhara also, this I think I was told it was, that every house had an outside courtyard, and many of the houses were connected to a larger courtyard. Well, in times of the Talmud, that's what it was. So the courtyard is really walled off. There's walls all around. There's openings to get in, but there's walls all around. It's really a Rosh Yachid. But because many houses open into that complex, so to speak, that courtyard, it's asur to carry in there. I'm saying you're not allowed to carry in there because it resembles somewhat of a public area. And in order to carry in there, you would have to make an Erev Chatzerot. An Erev Chatzerot is where everyone takes some food. You take food together, and everyone takes the food, and they say, it's all our food together. And they make an Erev, make a bracha. They then put this food away, and it's like turns the whole area into one big happy family, and everyone can now carry in there. That's Erev Chatzerot. Shituf Mevaot is very similar to that. And it's basically the alleys in between different courtyards. So they say you have 4 houses open to one courtyard, another 4 houses open to another courtyard, and those 2 courtyards meet at the alley. So that alley, if it's closed off on one side, so it has 3 walls, right? And you put a lechi on one side, you put a beam on one side, you now make this it's as if it has 4 walls, so now it's a Reshut Yahid. And in order to carry there, you have to make shituf mivaot, which is the same thing as Erev Chatzerot. You take some food and you combine everyone together, and you're allowed to carry in there now. But I will tell you, the truth is, our Erevs that we have today in our cities, so I think in Rego Park, in wherever you are, you have an Erev. So what happens is, it turns everything into one big Reshut Yachid. But everybody has their own house, and they walk in to this Reshut Yachid, which is a shared Reshut Yachid now, even though you make Tzuras HaPetach. Even though you make an Erev of a Tzuras HaPetach, of like door shapes, you still have to make an Erev Chatzerot. You still have to take a box of matzot, and you have to be zocheh it, you have to be acquire it for the whole community, right? Someone gives it to somebody, he acquires it for the whole community. He makes the bracha, and they put these matzot away. They use matzot, the hard matzot, because the hard matzot they last. They are long lasting, right? Because the food has to be in existence. When Shabbat starts, you have to have that Erev there. So they put it away, and as long as it lasts, the Erev Chatzerot works. So I know here in our town, I believe the Agudas Yisrael has a box of matzot that they made Erev Chatzeros, and that works for the whole community. I'm sure in Rego Park, whoever is in charge of the Erev, I think the Young Israel, would make an Erev Chatzerot. So this way, everyone turns into one big happy family, and everyone can carry in between their different Reshut Yachids and the communal Reshut Yachid. Without that, you would not be able to carry. And that is what this part of the Tosefta brings down, even though it's not one of the Rishiyot, it's Reshut Yachid now. But still, there's a Gezerah, the Rabbanan, you cannot carry in a public access Reshut Yachid without making an Erev Chatzerot. The Rambam explains it because we have to teach the people and the children, and everyone should know that really you cannot carry in a public place unless you make some sort of Erev. And this Erev Chatzirot is done so people would know. The only problem is today, you tell most people they have no idea about our Erev Chatzirot, and then if you tell them, they think you're coming from a hole in the wall. But this is the halacha l'ma'aseh, how you make an Erev Chatzirot after you make the Erev Tzuras HaPetach. You have to have combined all those public areas, all those public Reshut Yachid areas. Okay. Now, what's the 4th area? Adam omed al ha'iskupa. A person is standing on the threshold of a house. So now we're coming to the makom patur. I'll give you the halachic definition of the makom patur. It's anything that is at least 3 tvachim off the ground. So it's 3 times 4. So it's about 12 inches off the ground. Okay, at least 3 tvachim off the ground. and has an area of less than 4 by 4 inside. So it's a less than 16 by 16 inches. Okay? Either there's a wall of 3 tvachim high, or there is a elevation of 3 tvachim high, and an area of less than 4. Anything less than 3 tvachim high will be bottled to the ground. So it has at least a significant area of 3 tvachim high, platform or wall, and it has to have an area of less than 16 by 16 inches, less than 4 by 4 tvachim. That is considered a makom patur. Okay, common examples are narrow garbage cans and fire hydrants. They are a makom patur. Here, the guy has right outside his house a threshold that fits this qualification. So it's 3 tvachim off the ground, 12 inches off, and it is less than 16 by 16 inches. Okay, and he's standing there. So he's in a makom patur. No tell me balabait, he can take from the balabait, but no tell lo, and he can give him. No tell me ani, he can take from the ani from the Shut Rabim, but no tell lo, and he can give him. Why? Because a makom patur is a lot of transfer between Shut Achid and Shut Rabim. A lot of transfer in between the makom patur and them. But he shouldn't take from the balabait, from the Shut Achid, bring it to the makom patur, which is allowed, and then take from makom patur and bring it to Shut Rabim, which is also allowed, but he shouldn't do it because now he affected a transfer from Shut Achid to Shut Rabim, right? And if he did do that, they're all going to be patur. Why? Because in the end of the day, there was no transfer between Shut Achid and Shut Rabim. There was a transfer Shut Achid to makom patur, the makom patur Shut Rabim, which in the end of the day is going to be patur aval asur. The Chacham didn't want you to do that. But transfer from Shut Rabim to makom patur, or makom patur Shut Rabim, or from Shut Achid to makom patur, or makom patur to Shut Achid, that is allowed. L'chatchila, that's allowed. The makom patur is makom patur. Acher moimrim. That's Rabbi Meir. He says, listen, the threshold you can't say is in the makom patur. Iskupa mishameshet shtei reshiyot. The threshold of the door, this area right outside the door, bisman petach batuach, when the door is open, kilifnim. It's as if it belongs inside. So Shut Yachid. Petach na'u, bisman petach batuach kilifnim. Petach na'u, if the what's it called? The door is closed, kilachutz, then it'll be like the chutz. Ve'im hayta iskupa gavo asra chava arba'a. But if it was taller than 10 tvachim and bigger than 4 by 4 area, it will be its own reshut hayachid. Okay? Now, we're going to now analyze, the Gemara is now going to analyze this Tosefta. So the Tosefta said, oh my, zohi reshut hayachid. This is a reshut hayachid. What were they coming to exclude? What other reshut hayachid they were coming to exclude? Lemeute mai. Okay. So we have to go to Gemara and Eruvin for a moment. The Gemara deals with follows. The guy bought 2 houses. One guy has 2 houses. But 2 houses are on the opposite sides of the street. And the street in the middle is a Reshut Harabim. Okay? A biblical Reshut Harabim. And he wants to carry between these 2 houses. They're right across the street. So what can he do? So the first instance, the first advice that Yehuda gives, he says you can make a roof between those 2 houses, an awning, so to speak, between those 2 houses. And when you have this type of roof, it's as if the wall goes all the way down from the sides of the roof. And the in-between now becomes a reshut hayachid. And a person will now be walking from his house or to the other house, carry stuff in that, underneath that roof. Okay? That was the first advice. Then the Gemara says, the Tanya was talking about that. Yeter al kain al Rabbi Yehuda. Yehuda said even more. Someone has 2 houses on 2 sides of the opposite sides of a Reshut Rabim. Oseh lechi mikan velechi mikan, or koder mikan v'koder mikan, v'noise v'noitim be'emtza. Okay, very interesting. Yehuda said, "Listen, you have 2 walls, right? You have 2 sides of the house; they're facing each other, so you have 2 walls." According to Yehuda, we don't pass in this way, but according to Yehuda, 2 walls is a reshut hayachid, d'oraita. As long as you have two walls, Reshut Yachid Doraita. So if the Reshut Yachid Doraita, now you're right. The Chacham say you can't, some are going to say you can't carry there because it looks too much like a Reshut Rabim. But all you need to do is to fix it rabbinically. To fix it rabbinically, if I put a pole on each side of the wall of a house, right, of one house, let's say the two sides of that wall. So now you created 4 halachic walls. You have 2 real walls and 2 more halachic rabbinic walls, and now you would be able to carry in there. That is Rabbi Yehuda. And then you can carry in between there. Amrullah. The Chachamim said to him, no. No. The Chachamim argue. They say a Reshut Rabim is a Reshut Yachid is not 2 walls. That's not Reshut Yachid, the Oraita. Therefore, it's really a Reshut Rabim. And to fix a Reshut Rabim, you cannot put up a lechi, a beam, or a cross beam, or what's it called, a side post. You cannot put those up. It won't change it. Just agav, just to get a better understanding. In order to walk in the Reshut Rabim, to carry a Reshut Rabim on Shabbat, a real Reshut Rabim, you have to have doors that impede the traffic. Okay, so like in Jerusalem, you have walls all around the city, and if you close the city gates, perhaps you can turn the Yerushalayim into a Reshut Yachid, and people can walk in there and carry in there. When I say walk, I mean carry. You can carry in there on Shabbat. So here the Chachamim say the same thing. You cannot. It's the 2 walls. It's not a Reshut Yachid. You cannot just use a cross beam and a side post. You have to what's it called? Close it with doors. Just agav before we move on. There's actually there were some streets they said in Los Angeles and other places in the U.S. that maybe could be considered Reshut Rabim according to the stricter opinion. And they wanted to make an area there and able to walk. You cannot make a through the petach. You have to make doors. How are you going to make doors? So the Rambam has a wording that says delatot ruyot linol. The doors that can be closed, which poskim understand it to mean doesn't have to be closed, but they have to be able to be closed. So they were coming up with an idea of making doors in a canister. Okay? They're going to take plastic, wide plastic, the size of the street, and then wrap it up, put it in a canister, throw that canister on top of the traffic lights, and they'll have a pulley system that they can, so to speak, pull on it, and the plastic will come down, right? And it would impede traffic on both sides, and you would have a, so to speak, a door to make that Reshut Rabim able to be carried in. And I don't know if they ever did it, but that was the idea of making doors to make it happen. So the Chachamim say here, you cannot just use the side posts. It's not enough. Chachamim hold that you need to have walls in order to have a Reshut Yachid. How many walls? The Rambam understands it. In order to have a Reshut Yachid to Oraita, you need to have 4 walls. According to Rashi, not here but in Eruvin, that you need to have 3 walls to be considered Reshut Yachid to Oraita. But you still can't carry in there until you put up a side post or a cross beam. Then the Rabbanan let you carry there. The Rabbanan don't let you carry a Reshut Yachid to Oraita when 1 wall is missing, according to Rashi. According to the Rambam, it's not a Reshut Yachid to Oraita until you have 4 walls. Okay, so continue the Tosefta. V'amai korele gemura. Why does the Tosefta say this is Reshut Yachid gemura? Mahu detema, because what you would have thought, when did the Chachamim argue with Rabbi Yehuda about the 2 cross beams between those 2 houses, that it's not a Reshut Yachid? Haini mili litalta. It's only regarding carrying. We're not going to carry in there. But really is a Reshut Yachid right. Maybe that's what I would have thought. But if you threw something from Reshut Beam into that area that has the 2 side beams, maybe the Chachamim say it is a Reshut Yachid and you be chayav. Mashmalan, no. They don't hold that. They hold if you put 2 side beams by 2 walls, it's still considered Reshut Beam. And if you throw something from Reshut Beam to Reshut Beam, right, and it's less than the 4 amot, you're not going to be chayav for it because it's the same Reshut. It's not considered Reshut Yachid at all. That's why it's called. That's why it says that Reshut Yachid Gemura is our cases where you have the walls and you have the area, and not just the side beams to 2 other walls. Omar Mar. Zohi Reshut Rabim. This is Reshut Rabim. Lemeutai Mai. What does it come to exclude? Lemeutai Idach Rabbi Yehuda. Another case of Rabbi Yehuda. This time Rabbi Yehuda is more machmer. That's not. We learned in a Mishnah in Toharot. Okay. Second. No, I'm sorry. Mishnah in Eruvin. Mishnah in Eruvin 22a. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer. Rabbi Yehuda says, Im hayita derech reshut rabim masketan yas lekena litzdadim. Chamim omrim eno tzarich. If you have the article in front of you, 6B2 is a good picture. Okay, what's the issue over here? We'll tell you. The issue is when the Jews were coming to be Ola Regel, they're making the travel to Jerusalem on the holidays, and they need to drink from a well. Now, a well, if you think about it, it's more than 10 tefachim deep, and it's more than 16 inches by 16 inches in wide in its width. So you have a 4x4 tefach, and you have 10 tefachim deep. You have Rosh Yachid. The guy is standing in Reshut Rabim, and he's picking up water to drink. He's affecting a transfer from Reshut Yachid to Reshut Rabim. You're not allowed to do that on Shabbat. So, but they need to drink. So what are you going to do? And these wells are in public area. So if you see, they made side posts. They made side posts in the 4 areas, and the side posts have like an extension on both sides, so it looks like it's going both ways. And the Chacham said, this area, these side posts with this like L-shaped thing is good enough to make it a Reshut Yachid, and therefore a person will be able to drink in that area. He's going from Yachid to Reshut Yachid, and he'll be allowed to drink. He's not going to Reshut Rabim. Now, this is in the middle of the public area. This is the middle of Reshut Rabim. People sometimes walk in between these side posts, so they go into the area in order to continue into the Reshut Rabim. So Rabbi Yehuda says you got to stop them, because if they walk in, they are breaking the mechitzot. And then they are nullifying the mechitzat. So they're making it back to Reshut Rabim, and then people can't drink there. So Rabbi Yehuda says you can't use it if people walk through there. And the Chachamim say that you can. It remains a Reshut Yachid, and people walking through it does not negate the Reshut Hayachid. So interestingly, when there were 2 walls, the Chachamim said that's not Reshut Yachid, Reshut Rabim. And Rabbi Yehuda said, no, that's a Reshut Yachid. Even if you put the 2 cross beams, it's Reshut Yachid now. Here, when you have 4 side posts, Rabbi Yehuda says, no, that's not a Reshut Yachid. So someone explained, Rabbi Yehuda said, listen, you have 2 full walls. It's 2 full walls, Reshut Yachid. So you're allowed to carry in between them, technically. Here, you have no walls at all. So someone walks in between it, it negates the mechita, and you cannot carry in there. You can't drink from there. You can't transfer from there. Where the Chachamim say, listen, 2 walls are not Reshut Yachid, so therefore you can't carry it. Here you have 4 walls. You have 4 halachic walls. You have 4 D'Rabbanan walls, and therefore, even if people walk through it, it does not negate the Reshut Yachid status of that area. Okay. But my Karle Gemura, why you call it Gemura? No reason. I did the Tanya Gemura because the first case we taught Gemura to teach us that 2 walls is definitely not Reshut Yachid according to Chachamim. I'm saying Gemura for sake of parallelism, in order to have everything parallel in the Mishnah, because they learned it by heart. They left it that way. It's in Gemara as well. Okay, now comes a very important piece of Gemara and very important Tosefot, because this is one of the ways that we make everything today a Carmelit, and therefore you're allowed to make it sort of Petach for an Erev, so people can carry in there. Why didn't Tos have to say Midbar? Midbar is a Reshut Rabim. Dahatanya, Beis Reshut Rabim. We said, what's Reshut Rabim? Sabtaya, highway, Falta Gedola, a large public plaza, Muva'ot Mufalashin, open-ended city streets, Midbar, and a desert. Rabaya Lekasha? No, it depends. When the Jews were in the Midbar, then it was a Reshut Rabim. Today, when there's not people in the desert, it's not a Reshut Rabim. It is a Carmelit. It is a Carmelit today and not a public area. Now, there's important Tosefot that says, Says Tosavot, Mashma Kitzat, it means somewhat. It's not Reshut Rabim. Ela im Kain Mutzion Sham Shishim Ribu Kemo B'Midbar. Unless you have 600,000 people there, like they had in the Midbar. Tosavot's like, why are you teaching me this? You know why? Because in the Midbar there were 600,000 people. That made it in Reshut Rabim. So if I don't have 600,000 people traveling through that street every day, it's not in Reshut Rabim. And in most of our areas, there's no 600,000 people traveling through there every single day on that street. And even if you want to say that counting the cars, you don't count the cars. The poskim say the cars is its own reshut. It's not considered people walking there. It has to be foot traffic of 600,000 people. And most places don't have foot traffic of 600,000 people. As such, there is no reshut harabim today. Everything is called a carmelit, and therefore you're allowed to make a Torah Petach, you're allowed to make an Erev Chatzeros, and a person can go and carry in there. And for Erev, person should be makel. Person should be lenient in order to make an Erev, and don't be machmer. People will carry; they'll carry without an Erev. Why let them carry without an Erev when you can make an Erev for them? And it's part of an important structure of a Jewish community to have an Erev. And there are many poskim went out of the way to figure out ways to make an Erev. Kumavadia was very for every Erev. You're right. There's many shittot how to be machmer like the Rambam. The Rambam doesn't bring down the 600,000. According to the Rambam, right? 600,000 makes no difference. It's a Reshut Rabim if it's 16 amod wide, right? And that makes it a Reshut Rabim. And so many places are called Reshut Rabim according to the Rambam. And you need doors to be able to doors that can be closed in order to make it to be able to walk there. But la halacha, we have posek like this Tosefot, and like all those who hold you need 600,000 people to be there. Rav Moshe had an interesting calculation of how to count 600,000, not just walking there, but the population who live there in a certain radius, in a certain area. And because of that, in Brooklyn, there are certain places that may or may not have an Erev because of Rav Moshe's psak and Moshe's godless and his greatness. Rav Moshe Feinstein was against an Erev in Brooklyn due to his calculations. Chavadia, though, on the other hand, was pushing for an Erev to be made everywhere, including Flatbush, including all these other places. So it's very important that people understand, even though in deference to the Gadol of Moshe, it is important that the Chachamim, the Rabbanim of whatever city, work on making an Erev that is acceptable to the community. Very, very important halacha. And they can use the 600,000. Others say in order to reach the Rabim, also other ways to get out of it. Others make sure the Rabim is that it has to be one long street from end to end of the city, right? And if you don't have that any street that's not straight is not considered the Rabim. So there's many ways around not to make something the Rabim. Anything that's roofed, there's many, many ways. They say that in the cities they have houses going all around the city, and there's more closed area of walls, right? From the outskirts of the city, all the inside is closed by mostly walls because there's tons of houses and buildings and all that other stuff. So there's more walls than open area. Maybe it's also not a Reshut Rabim. There's many ways to view it as a carmelit, and as such, you can make a tzura petach and make an erev simply. Okay, continuing on. Amar Mar, the Stefta said, tell us what the punishments are. Gemara says, of course, Pshita, we know this, Yechayev Chatat. So, no, I was coming to teach us, Bemezid, Onish Kars Veniska. Tell if you did it on purpose, you can get karet, or if you were warned, you get skila. It's that's what I needed. Gemara says, Hanaim Pshita, we also know this. So what was it coming for? Hakamash Milan, it was coming, Kid Rav, it's coming to teach us like Rav, the Amar Rav. Rav says, I was Matzati Megillas Sitarim Be Rabbi Hiya. I found a hidden scroll in the academy of Rabbi Hiya. Rav is Rabbi Hiya's nephew, and he found a hidden scroll. What is a hidden scroll? This is the time before the Mishnah was written down, before Torah Shabbat Peh was put down on paper, so you're not allowed to really write things down, but people did because they needed to remember things. So they had what's called personal notes, and it was considered hidden scrolls. And Matzati Megillat Sitarim Be Rabbi Hiya. It was written there. Isi ben Yehuda Omer. Avot Menachot 40 Haser Achad. The primary labors for on Shabbat are 40 minus 1. The Eno Hayav Ela Achad. And you only Hayav for 1. The Gemara says, Any? Is it true you're only chayav for one? Even if a person did all 39 melachot, you chayav only one chatat. Avot melachot, there are 39 melachot. V'havin and ba, in discussing this Mishnah on Daf 73, minyanel lamali, what I need the number. Rabbi Yochanan, shimasan kulam hel mechad. The person did all of them, right? All the 39 melachot. Chayav al kol achat echad. He has to bring a chatat for every single one. So you see, you could bring a chatat for more than one. So what does it mean? There's one melacha. There's one labor for which there is no penalty of stoning, but he did not say which one. Okay, so this case, our case of hotza'ah, is a case that a person could get sekila from it. So it's not the case that Yisrael Ben Yehuda says there's one melacha that you won't get sekila for it. Continuing, Amar Mar, Aval Yam Ubika, Vaistavanit, Varkarmelin, and then Lo Kishud Yachid, Lo Kishud Rabim. It's not the Shud Yachid, not Shud Rabim. It is a Shud Rabim Derabanan. It's known as a Carmelit. Okay. Now, one of the things that are mentioned was an open field. Uvika, and Lo Kishud Yachid, Lo Kishud Rabim. Are you telling me an open field is not the Shud Yachid, not Shud Rabim? But we have a Hatanan. But there is a Mishnah in Toharot. 6.6, the Mishnah says, Habika, an area of an open field, be a motahama in the summer season, Reshut HaYachid l'Shabbat. The open field is considered Reshut HaYachid. Closed off, looks like. Or Reshut Rabim l'Tumah, but it's considered Reshut Rabim l'Tumah because people walk there, I guess. For Tumah, it's Reshut Rabim. Why? What's important for Reshut Rabim l'Tumah? If a person has Safik Tumah, he's not sure if he became Tameh or not. If it's in a Reshut Rabim, he's tahar, and if it's Yachid, he's tameh. So we're saying here, an open field for Tumah, it's Reshut Rabim in the summer. But in the winter, it's considered a private domain for both Shabbat laws and for Tumah laws. So what do you see? It says Bika is Reshut Yachid. So how could you say over here that Bika is a Carmelit? So Amar Ula, no. La'olam Carmelit Havaya. Really, the Bika is a Carmelit. But my Reshut Yachid, why does this Mishnah in Toharot say that it's Reshut Yachid? They're not talking about Hilchot Shabbat. They're just telling you the fish ain't not Reshut Rabim, that it's not a Reshut Rabim. It's a lot of dafka. When it says Reshut Yachid, it doesn't mean Reshut Yachid. It means it's not Reshut Rabim. That's what it was teaching. But Ashi Amar, Ashi says, Kigon de itla mechitzot. No, you know what the case is? It really is Reshut Yachid. It has walls. It has walls. That makes it Reshut Yachid. So even though it's an open field, right? An open field is a Carmelit, right? 100%. But in this case, in the Mishnah Torah, it has walls. It has walls. It's a Reshut HaYachid for Shabbat. Hid Amar Ula, Amar of Yochanan. As Rav Ula said in the name of Yochanan, when you have a karpaf, Yoter Beit Satayim, Shlohu Kaf L'Dira. If you have a karpaf, which is 5,000 square amot area, okay? 5,000 square amot area, and it was gated off, right, for non-residential use. People are not living there. There's no house that opens in there. It's not for residential. It is warehouse. There was whatever it is. It's not for residential. I feel Kuraim. Hazoret letocho hayab. My tama mechitzahi. Ela shemechuseret deorin. When you have a karpaf, it really is Reshut Yachid. It's covered all over. And if you throw into it from Shul Bin Yachid, you're going to be chayav. But you're not allowed to carry in there. Why? Again, since it is an open area and it's not residential use, it looks somewhat like a Reshut Rabim, and therefore you're not allowed to carry in there. And so you see, it's a Reshut Yachid, but it's really Reshut Yachid because it has walls. So same thing by the Bik'ah over here. It has walls. Since the field are discussed, the Mishnah is larger than 2 Beit Sa'ah, it's 5,000 square amot, and surrounded by partition. It's a private domain in regard to Shabbat, for it is indeed so on a biblical level. Okay. Bish, the Rav Ashi Lamar Kedula, makes sense Rav Ashi and say Kedula, because listen, it makes more sense. It says how come Ula didn't explain it the way Rav Ashi is using Ula to explain the Mishnah? Amar Lach, says Ula. If there were mechitzot, bik'ah kareve, would you call it a bik'ah? A bik'ah? Karpefi, it's a karpaf. You would call the Mishnah would say a karpaf. Why is it calling bik'ah? Rav Ashi, he says, you're right, it is a karpaf, but the fact that it said the Reshut Yachid, that teaches you it's a karpaf. Even though it said bik'ah, it doesn't make a difference. It tells the Reshut Yachid, so it must be a karpaf. So interestingly, just to mention, a karpaf is 5,000 square amot area that is closed off for non-residential purposes. You're not allowed to carry in there. Okay, this can be an issue in a lot of Arabs because you have, let's say, you have a body of water, or you have a park, or something like that. It's not a residential area and has 5,000 square amot. It's a karpaf, and you can't carry there. Does it negate the rest of the Arab? Is other issues. How do you block out the karpaf? And stuff like that is another issue that people making Erev have to take a look at. Maybe we'll get into it more the next time. Just 5,000 square amot. Trying to see how much an amma is. I wrote it down one time somewhere. Let me see. Between 18 and 24 inches. So let's say 20 inches. So do 20 times 5,000. Okay. 20 times 5,000.
100,000.
So 100,000 square inch area. Divided by 12 will get you feet. So about an 8,300 square foot area that is non-residential becomes a karpaf. And you're not allowed to carry there, even if it has walls all around it. So some interesting information regarding Erev, Shabbat, Hotza'ah, Nasa, Zat Hashem. We'll continue next time with more. Thank you.
How do you expect?
Say again?
How do you expect an ordinary person to remember this?
The main thing is to remember the 4 rishiyot. So we'll review the 4 rishiyot. Reshut Yachid is something that has walls, 10 tefachim high, at least about 40 inches high, and has an area a minimum of 4 by 4, 16 by 16 inches. Okay, that's Reshut Yachid. Reshut Rabim is a big place that, for our halachic definition, at least 600,000 people are walking there. As such, it doesn't exist. Everything else is a karmelit, and you're not allowed to walk, you're not allowed to carry in there based on the Rabbanan. And that's why you're allowed to make an Erev, Tzirat Petach, Erev Chatzeros, you can carry in there. The only other place is a Makom Patur, which is your fire hydrant or your narrow garbage cans, which is at least 3 tvachim high, and it has an area of less than 4 by 4, less than 16 by 16 inches. And that you're allowed to carry, you're allowed to transfer from there to any other place. That's it in a nutshell. Then the karpaf is the karpaf, and the other things that we'll get into in the future. Okay? Yeah, I should go.